Hi everyone, this is Suzanne Wagner, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about the intuitive patterns for the month of February 2019. We're in this month of the lovers, and we're in an astrological period that is intense, complex, and building towards something. In such moments, I find things flower. So think of it like the desert. The desert flowers after a storm. So after there's this huge amount of rain and lightning and drenching and soaking of the ground, we suddenly have a flowering and a growth. So we've been getting soaked and drenched for years now, and it is building towards something that is trying to expand out of. And if you look at all of the great periods of time in history, great moments that we lived through, the baby boomers lived through, came after World War I and World War II. Sometimes it takes catalytic events to cause major structural changes. And those structural changes are not always fun. They're difficult and they're hard. And I know that a lot of people feel this kind of existential pressure. And I can't tell you how many people come to my office and say, I just keep getting this sinking feeling. I have this horrible feeling on the inside. And I just feel like something's about to happen. And I would agree with them. We've got a lot of astrological energies, numerological energies, things building up towards something. And what that something is like that storm. It's just like you feel the barometric pressure change. And you know a storm is coming. You know, people who have injuries, you know, their knees suddenly start to ache. And we're in that place where it's like, oh, do you feel that? Do you feel that? And it's like, yeah, you know, I think a lot of people are feeling that. So what do you do? What do you do? First of all, I try and relax. I think that calmness is really important to find clarity. So I think that the chaos sort of breeds a type of ignorance and contempt. So you have to learn to trust, you have to learn to flow, you have to recognize that the universe doesn't give us these little warning systems to give us a heads up. And we've been getting a lot of heads ups for a while. And then the cards that I got for this month, Spider. Spider is about words and the words that we weave, you know, oh, the tangled web we weave when we first try to deceive, of course. Notice what you think. Notice the words that you're using and how you're using them. And even if you can reframe them. One of the things that I tried to do many, many years ago was I could see that I was in this duality of using words that were good, bad, right, wrong. And I recognized that that wasn't a healthy way to exist. And so I started shifting my words around, but I even shifted in my mind what the word meant. So instead of right, R-I-G-H-T, I made it write, W-R-I-T-E. And that made me recognize that I needed to write things down. I needed to notice what my words were. One of the great things about doing videos is that you start to see these verbal habitual patterns, and when you watch your video it drives you crazy because you're like, oh my god, how did I say that again? And it forces you by the reflection to see that which is an irritant to others. One of the things I think that's important is to notice what patterns right now in the world irritate you. If they're irritating you, it's probably because you're doing them somewhere on the inside. But right now, because we are co-creating something very powerful, noticing the words that you use, the intention upon which you use those words, and what you give as the meaning of those words becomes very important. Because the words that we're using are going to manifest and create something. And So I think that what we share, especially on the internet, um, if I'm writing an article, is really important. So this month, notice the words that you use. Notice, because we're in the month of the lovers, how can you express more love in words and actions, obviously, but in words? How often do we not compliment other people because we were not complimented enough when we were younger? With the links card, I love links. I live in an area where we have all these links, and I love watching the links as they pace back and forth. And links really remind me that I don't always know who I am. I don't really know what's really going on inside. How do you discover the mystery that is you? The first thing is to notice what you're avoiding, and notice what you're afraid of confronting, and notice what's important to you, but then decide if what is important to you is based on ego. One of the things that I have been practicing in this cycle for the last few years has been to really try to discern when people are speaking from a place of ego and attachment. I've noticed something that's really interesting to me, which is that I think because I'm a retired ballet dancer, and I think because I did ego to the nth degree, so this is not like saying I don't have ego, right? So, but really doing ego in the biggest, broadest sense in front of thousands of people. Because I think if you expand something really far one direction, then you have the ability to pull it into the other direction. So I don't think being an ego is bad. I think being an ego is a lesson. It's a learning. It's a stepping stone tool. And what this time period has kind of pointed out to me are how many people do not have a healthy, developed ego. Because I think there is a healthy, developed ego that is designed to protect you. But I think when you never had an opportunity to stand out, be seen, be recognized, be acknowledged, I think that then you look for some sort of reflection that will give you some sort of ego, which is often a dysfunctional ego. So I see a lot of things that go out there in the world, and they're coming from fear, and they're coming from lack, and they're coming from a lack of self-worth, lack of certainty. And again, we can all, speak like Hitler and be very emphatic and we know everything, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's one of the mistakes that we have in our world right now, that there is so much audio and video stuff, and you get people that have a lot of power in words and certainty. But is that actually a healthy ego, or is it a reflection of a dysfunctional, wounded child ego? And to me, there's a big difference. There's a big difference. And it's tricky because I recognize, having done this as long as I've done this and having dealt with my own, that there are evolutionary developments of ego that you do have to go through. I mean, you just do. And so in my life right now, I sit back and I watch all of these mirrors of ego, all sorts of different ones all around. And I don't know if I'm just more aware of it, or I don't know if it's because the situation is such that unhealthy egos have permission to suddenly come out and be seen and to be expressed. I think that's really what it is. I think that there's been this dysfunctional permission that has started to happen, that we can express our childishness as certainty, and our fears and our inadequacies as certainty. So I think we're at this door, um, which brings us to the next power animal this month in February, which is crow. And crow is about walking your talk and speaking your truth. So the story about the crow was that the crow was like a peacock, and it had these beautiful feathers, and it saw mankind freezing to death, and so it went up to the sun and it grabbed fire from the sun with the stick it was holding in its mouth, and it flew down to bring fire to mankind, to save mankind. And in doing that, its voice became a croak and its feathers turned black. And so I like to look at this from the standpoint of sacrifice, that sometimes for good things to happen, you have to sacrifice something that is very sacred, which is all this finery, like the feathers of a peacock, like this beautiful voice and these luxurious clothes and things like this, that we have to sacrifice something for the greater good. And I think we're in a world right now where humanity is starting to awaken and see that it's no longer about me. It's about us. And it isn't us. I mean, and I mean us, not just human us. I mean the world us. I think that the animals and the plants and the trees, all of this, we're choking under the garbage that we are stuffing out into the world, like we're like expressing out into the world. And there's a lot of garbage that's being expressed out there that doesn't have heart, and it isn't coming from heart. It's coming from wound, and it's coming from neediness, and it's like filling a space. It's filling the emptiness. And the more I hear all of that in the world, the more I go the other way. So I actually go into that quietness and that emptiness. I put a thing out towards the end of December about petty tyrants, and it's just been amazing to me watching people that are like protecting their little anthill, their little spot that they think they can be king of the hill, and they need to be the best at. And we see so much of this out in the world, that I'm the best facilitator, or I'm the best teacher, or I am the wisest, or I'm the most enlightened, or I've got this tool that's going to fix you, and if you listen to me, you're going to lose weight and you're going to be happy. And having done this for so long and being almost 60 years old, it just is ridiculous. It's just completely ridiculous. It just doesn't work that way. It's like, what I know is that it's not about what I say. It's not about what I know. It's about what I'm willing to support you in discovering. And so there isn't a tool. There isn't a thing that will fix you. No other person can do your karma for you. It's a journey of self-discovery. All these external abnormalities are designed to irritate you to the point that you start looking down and trying to figure out what's bothering you, like what's causing this itch, so that then you actually shift. So this month's cards are about a realm shift, and that it's time for universal movement. It's not time for just personal movement. It's time for universal movement. And there's so much going on right now that, there's redemption through sacrifice, and there's strength by honoring and recognizing the suffering. That doesn't mean you have to be able to fix it or even know how to fix it, but you have to acknowledge it before you can even begin to fix it. So how do we take the competition out? And I remember something that the guide said to me when I was young, and it was a really powerful thing. They said, you are not the first. You are not the last. You're in the big group in the middle. And I realized that, even spiritual practices can be a competition, like who's the best and who's the greatest. And it's again ridiculous. It's ridiculous because you're not the first, you're not the last, you're in the big group in the middle. So we're all going to get there when we get there. And the best way we can get there is to help each other and to share ideas and to share insights and perspectives. I think if we do that, there is an ease to the stress, an ease to the frustration and the aggravation. So this month, take a look and notice those around you that are coming from not a healthy ego, but a wounded, fear-based, a child ego that never found out who they really are. And the louder someone talks and the more emphatic that they are, that they have a tool. What I always laugh at is that one of my teachers, of course, said the teacher is the student as the teacher is the student. So the best way to live life is to share what you know when you know it, but then to recognize that you are the student at all times. And there's a great phrase in NLP that they use, that you teach best what you most need to learn. So when I see a teacher being so loud and emphatic and my way is the only way, and I'm the reincarnation of whatever, I remember that, that you teach best what you most need to learn. And that, even in my own work, I found that by teaching Tarot, I became better at Tarot. I understood Tarot better. By teaching numerology, I dove into numerology deeper, and I began to understand numerology even more deeply. And that's a beautiful thing. So I don't think it's a bad thing that's happening. But more importantly, this month, in the month of lovers, is, are you showing love and care and affection to those that are so important to you? And how can you show them love, not from the place that you feel you have to give, but if you love from the place of what the other person needs instead? Because I think that we only understand in the language that we speak. And by speaking another person's language, you actually begin to understand their language over time. And that in turn expands you. So it's not about getting what you want. It's about giving what someone else needs and acknowledging the incredible gifts that other people in our life and humanity have given you. But there are moments that you have to also completely let go. So this is an interesting month because we're in the month of the lovers, that how do we love those that have been in our past and also totally, completely release them. And the reason people don't release others from their past is because of grief, that we fear going through the grief, the realization that you have to let them go. So we kind of hang on to them. And when you hang on to people, you're hanging on to not the person, but you're hanging on to an image of what they represented to you, not who they really are. Because we fall in love with reflections of ourself, not oftentimes the other person. It's very hard to see beyond what our expectations are and to actually see the person. And in letting someone go, the other part that you don't want to do usually is actually see who they are. And that's sad. Sometimes it's like that they are something very different than what they presented, or they are different than the gift that they came to give you. Because I think people come in to give us gifts, but I think once that gift is given, they have to go on their own karmic journey. So this is a powerful moment of understanding love, understanding the complexity of love, being willing to see someone as they really are, not as you needed them to be or wanted them to be, and not seeing them as the gift that they gave you. And yet, that gift that they gave you is very real, and that you honor that gift. You can hold the gift and you can let the person go. All right. Thanks, everybody.